Let them fix fuel and line. That's the reason why I'm brother. What happened? What happened? We are hungry.
Just right away, and of course we'll also be talking about what we have discussed this morning, which is also part of the major headlines this morning on the papers, and that is the end bad governance protest that is being planned by some youths, and the urge from certain quarters that this shouldn't happen. And we do have one of the activists who is in support of this protest, Omoyele Sowore, a political activist, a former presidential candidate, joining us virtually now, all the way from
New Jersey.
New Jersey. Thank you so much for making our time to be with us on the show.
Good morning, Sowore.
Thank you for having me. Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Now, well, a lot of prominent activists are saying that the young people have a right to protest and, of course, have the freedom to speak out. Well, on the other side, we see some institutional leads from, NANS to religious leaders saying that there should be calm in the midst of the storm and find a way to have a conversation with the executive. Well, what's your stance on this? And I saw in the paper that you said that the FCT will be the place to commence the protests. Can you lead us into what the plans are?
Well, that was a response to the Commissioner of Police in the FCT that the FCT would not participate, or discouraging people or threatening people not to participate in the protest. And I responded immediately that the FCT, being the federal capital of Nigeria, would be the first place for protests to commence, because that's where all the guys who are causing these problems are based officially. So, and that is a message for the CP and whomever is trying to discourage or threaten people, intimidate people in the FCT. So, and I hope he got my message very clear that there is no going back on this protest in the FCT and other parts of Nigeria. This is a protest, to my mind, that will happen in all the cities, towns, and villages in Nigeria and beyond. There are also plans by people in the diaspora to go to the embassies and consulates, Nigeria concerns, wherever they might find them, and where they don't exist, to go to the government of their home countries to lay the complaints against the Nigerian government to end bad governance across the country.
And when you say there's no going back on this protest, it gives a sense that no matter what government does, there won't be any going back. Or is there anything you think, if government takes that initiative now and does it from today, like our reviewer said, I don't know if you listen to them, that this protest can be averted?
No, we know that by nature, governments do not listen to people. They don't listen to the Nigerian people until Nigerian people step their foot down. And that is what's going to happen. There's a set of demands. We have 15 on our side that has been made public. And so far, what we've seen the government do is just do what they know how to do best. In my view, actually to fuel and insult and provoke the people to protest, and people are ready to respond appropriately. So I do not see them resolving any of those issues. Of course, I listen to your reviewers, and both of them made fantastic submission on some of the issues, particularly on the hardship imposed on the people. But I disagree with them fundamentally on the issue of the Southeast, where they said people have no right to sit at home. Well, there's a reason why the people are sitting at home in the Southeast, and it's part of the demands of this protest. And it's very clear, the release of Mazin Nnamdi Kanu, who has been held illegally in detention for the past 3 years, abducted from Kenya, and what is known internationally as extraordinary rendition, which is unacceptable in international law.
All right. Now, I saw a report on a list of some of the things that were listed on Sahara Reporters when you talked about the fact that what hashtag revolution now is about the movement to stop bad governance. And you unveiled a list of Nigerians in positions of authority inciting the public to riot.
Yes.
We listened to some of the things that the reviewers say, and I know that on your X handle you narrated some of the things that were bad with this government. You talked about the fact that Senator Godswill Akpabio and House of Rep Speaker Tajuddin Abbas are leading the most useless Senate and House of Rep. I mean, you use such words, on your listing. How do you also hope, because the word riot, the word protest, there's a thin line. And, some of the things that the reviewer said was procurement of third parties in this protest. Are you perhaps worried that this could be manipulated at some point by the executive or perhaps third parties?
I think your reviewer, particularly the newspaper columnist Muda, I don't remember his name correctly,
Dr.
made a
Maho, yes.
fantastic submission. Yes, about this. That it has never happened. I have participated in over 200 protests in Nigeria and elsewhere, and there's never been a time that I have participated in a protest that was violent in any nature or in which we procured third parties. The third parties, or the fifth columnists as they are referred to, are government either infiltrating these protests or provoking protesters who are engaging in peaceful protests uh, to suppress their voices, and this is what leads to violence most of the cases. In the case that he raised, which was the last one, NSAS, it was a non-violent protest, but governments initially sent security agents used SUVs to convey thugs to beat up protesters in Abuja at Bega. They brought people all the way from Katsina and Kaduna with daggers, with violent, with dangerous weapons to attack protesters. Some of the protesters actually fought back and drove them away. In Lagos before the government sent soldiers to kill protesters at the toll gate. They had initially brought some thugs from Agege. You must have seen that iconic picture of a guy in Lagos who was holding a machete. He came to attack protesters, particularly our own members in Ikeja, with machete. They were brought in Lagos state buses to that venue. It was when that didn't work that they brought in soldiers from a barrack in Lagos to shoot and kill protesters at the toll gate. So it's always government that introduces violence into this protest. So there is no need blackmailing innocent peaceful protesters with the tag that there are third parties. If there are third parties or fifth column, it's always the Nigerian government have done this, and they do it in such a brazen manner that they don't even hide their footprints when they engage in this.
Okay, there are questions as to whether protests really address issues at the end of the day, because at the end of the NSAS protest, okay, we saw that there's no longer SARS. That was the most the government could do, replacing it with another name, really, so to speak, and we don't have that much brutality anymore. But then some of the other reforms that the people talked about during that process are still there. We're still having some of the issues till today. So to avert such a breakdown, again, by hoodlums or people who may be imported, like you said, by the government to destabilize the protesters, do you think that if the government toes the line that the NLC is talking about now, which is to judge with the people, that, it may be a way to stop the protest from starting at all? And the government, even Tinubu, is also talking about in the papers today that he's already addressing the issues, so there's no need for protest, that he would do more.
If the government was addressing the issue, even you will know because you are in the media, you are analyzing what's happening in Nigeria today. They have not addressed any of the issues. And the interesting thing about this particular protest was that unlike NSAS, we started to discuss some of the terms, at the point it was 1 for 5 or this one already has placed in front of everybody, beyond even the government, what the demands are. And you can see it everywhere. And the columnist on your show this morning made a fantastic submission about restoration of subsidy. But we just don't want subsidy restored. We want subsidy to be restored in a short term, which is that, to ease the pain of Nigeria. Because that's the only thing you benefit from Nigeria anyway. but ultimately that we must prepare our refineries to be self-sustaining in the energy sector. As I'm talking to you, I already have information here that there's no electricity in Nigeria today, that the national grid has collapsed again and in major parts of the country. So to address all this fundamentally, but does it look like government is doing that? No. They're only there taking care of themselves. As I'm speaking with you, a jet will soon be on his way to Nigeria, purchased by the Nigerian president. It's almost $150 million in the midst of people being unable to feed themselves and families and afford even, medicine. They can't send their children to school anymore. The system in the country has collapsed. Nobody's doing anything about it. These guys, like one of your analysts said this morning, are acting like rock stars. But I think it's even it's even diminishing, how they act by saying they act like rock stars, because rock stars act, and after a point they go rest. These guys act as rock stars all day long, all night long. I just received a video yesterday of the wife of governor of Kebbi State in the middle of this economic crisis, just rolling around in a private jet. There is no governor in Nigeria that you can find inside a commercial jet in the US. I have lived in the US for some 24 years now. I come across governors, senators in private, commercial jets. It's almost a scandal to find a public official inside, private jets. I have been in the same train before from Delaware, where the current president of the US, who just dropped out of the race, Biden, entered the same coach with me on my way to Washington, D.C. Why is it that Nigerian leaders can't do that? And that's why that list we mentioned earlier of people who are inciting people to riot, we have now increased it to 20. Initially, I think it was 15 or 14. And this included Buhari, the former president, who was the architect of all this, and all his enablers, the former central bank governor, who created a crisis in the currency sector, in the monetary sector, by changing naira or coloration of the naira in the middle of an election. This is where all the dislocation came from. But why the current government must be dealt with even more is that when they came with impunity. And impunity was the president saying on the first day of being sworn in that we're going to punish you people with removal of subsidy. And he went ahead and did it and completely crippled the average Nigerian family from being able to survive, such that by the time they completed their minimum wage conversation, the minimum wage had become useless as well. It cannot even transport a person from home to work and back. It can't buy a bag of rice. It can't feed you. So what are we talking about? So this is the reason why I very clear, and I do not wager even about it, that the protests will go ahead and will be very successful and will be massively attended by Nigerians across the country and beyond.
I hear what you said, and let's look at the demands that you're making. Some of which are constitution for the Federal Republic of Nigeria through a sovereign national conference, immediately followed by a national referendum was one of them. You also said toss the Senate arm of the Nigerian legislative system, keep the House of Representatives, and make lawmaking a part-time endeavor. And then you said pay Nigerian workers a minimum wage of nothing less than 250,000 naira monthly. Now remember that just a few days ago, the NLC and the Nigerian government arrived at a sum of 70,000 naira monthly with a subject to review it after 3 years. Isn't that a way into the conversation for the first instance?
No, these are knee-jerk reactions. Knee-jerk in the sense that the only reason why the NLC actually got their 70,000 was because of the threat of this protest. Otherwise, they had been at it. They've been going to meetings all the time. And I don't want to disparage the NLC leaders too much, but I was with them before, a few months ago, where we had a protest on the streets of Abuja. And I know what goes on underground. They're under a lot of pressure from security agents, traditional rulers. There's a whole complication to how they operate, including their own inadequacies, which is not the issue here. The issue here is that it's the Nigerian people who are calling for a living wage, not NLC bureaucrats. And that's the difference between what they have said and, I would have expected the NLC to actually declare a strike, because each time they demand for wage increase, the Nigerian people always join them in their strike. The civil society groups, activist groups, the media, all of them are always part of it. But now that Nigerian people are demanding for relief, I would have expected the NLC to stop behaving like simply at the Pontius Pilate, like, oh, wash our hands off this. Please go and have a conversation with the government.
Okay, but let's look at another angle. What if the president now calls, because the suggestion by the NLC is that the president should actually judge with the leaders, and one doesn't even know who the leaders of this protests are. Are you one of them? And if government really says, okay, come, let's judge, let me tell you what I plan to do, would you, go to that meeting at the round table? Because they say it's usually better to judge than to war.
No, I won't go to any roundtable with government because the demands are very clear. If these demands are to be met, the government knows what to do, exactly what to do. But I can promise you that they are not interested in solving the problems. That is the reason why they are bribing religious leaders, both Muslim and Christians across the country, to tell people not to go out to protest. That's why they are pushing their officials to provoke and incite people. You should hear what Bayo Ononuga said, accusing the Labour Party, in a very reckless and, in my view, very xenophobic way, stylishly accusing a section of the country of inciting people to riot on issues that affects everybody. If government wanted to talk to people, they wouldn't do that. But the important thing is that I can guarantee you that they are not interested in addressing this issue. If they want to address this issue, they will be so fundamental that there is not going to be anything else done between now and until a new Nigeria is built. But don't let anybody deceive you that you are going to get a brand new Nigeria, or a Nigeria that's focused on progress and development without staging a fight. That's what we should not have any illusion about. So if they call anybody to any meeting, I can guarantee you will also be the usual people they call. Somebody was saying earlier that, they didn't know NSAS leaders. Let me bust your bubble today. The problem they had with NSAS was that they were trying to create leaders for NSAS. There was a time that the police had a meeting with Naira Marley. You remember that?
Yeah.
And then at a point, they went and brought the video to the headquarters of the police. It was when it didn't work that they went after the organic people who were fighting on the streets, like your columnist, your analysts properly described. So it's the nature of Nigerian government to be deceptive and to be dishonest in dealing with public issues. So I'm not going to waste my time sitting down here that, these are the people I want to recommend to dialogue with government. Nigerian government doesn't believe in dialogue. They will only dialogue when the people have exercised their own authority to say enough is enough. And I've never seen that. I don't see how that is going to happen. And to meet up with all these demands at any rate, we go beyond just ordinary dialogue. So let Nigerian people revolt and get the country they want. And let those who they have hired be given the marching order to do what Nigerian people do best. Not to organize another jamboree or a meeting where everybody is coming around to deceive that, I'm not representing, I'm not going to any meeting. I've never, and I've said this, and this is important for the public to know, I've never entered into any government office before, officially in Nigeria, except some of them that deals with my daily life, or the ones that disrupt my daily life. I get forced to go into police stations.
Let me just come in here because
I don't go to meetings with government because I know what those meetings are about. It's
Indeed.
to go and compromise and bribe people. And that's why you see some of our labor people sound the way they sound. They've attended too many midnight meetings with those
All
in
right.
government.
Okay, sure. Let me just come in here before we go for Kakaki socials at 8. One
Yeah.
of the demand is that, release of Mazin Namdi Kanu unconditionally
Yes.
and to demilitarize the southeast. And again, I
Yes.
mean, conversations have been ongoing with, regards to releasing the Namdi Kanu. However, is it just down to the executive? What about the state governments of, the southeastern region, the governors themselves? Do you think that they have a part to play in this as well, in terms of the demand for good governance and ending bad governance?
No, I completely agree with you, and we have made it very clear in the updated demands that everybody that is protesting must also go after their state government. Because if you look at what the governors are doing in destroying the economies of their state, in corruption and looting and public waste, you would know that they should not be spared at all. I mentioned earlier how governors roll around. There are governors in Nigeria who don't even live in their state capitals, live in Abuja. And I heard one of them make a foolish statement today that this hardship that is going, I think is the one from Taraba, that the hardship that's going on in the country is the act of God. It's not the act of God, it's the act of man, governors,
All right.
and those who are governing Nigeria. So
All right.
these governors must be taught a lesson as well as we are teaching the federal a lesson. Everybody should go to their state government house, protest against them. Make sure that we get rid of what they call security vote, which is one of their biggest sources of corruption in government houses. We
All
have
right.
asked the people
Okay, we just have
of
to
Kogi
end it
State, for
here.
instance, just one instance, to go to the government house and force their former governor to be delivered to EFCC as a way of teaching former governors lessons that if you still.
All right. We must thank you very much for making our time to share this thought with us. The worry is if there's no judge, or then how does the protest end at the end of the day? Will it continue forever and all that? So, all right. We thank you very much for your thoughts. Omoyele Sowore has joined.
Nigeria, they use computer. The leaders of Nigeria, they use radio where they turn the knob.